All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking the epic, sweeping historical and literary foundations of the Judeo-Christian worldview, specifically looking at the book of Genesis. Whether you approach this text as history, theology, or just pure literature, the sheer narrative scale of this source material is, well, it's absolutely fascinating. To really grasp why this ancient text matters so much today, just consider this staggering number: 95%. That's the portion of the global population that actually has access to these writings right now in their own native language. Crazy, right? Very few documents in literally all of human history have shaped laws, cultures, and moral frameworks quite as profoundly as this one. It's a text that's captivated brilliant scholars and really just everyday people for millennia. To navigate a text this vast, we're going to use a sort of cinematic zoom effect. We'll start with the creation of the universe and zoom all the way down to a single man. So our agenda for this explainer is the big picture, the primeval era, Abraham's journey, Jacob's trials, and finally, the birth of Israel. Section 1, the big picture. Let's start with that really wide cosmic lens to understand the massive historical eras this text presents to us. So this timeline visually maps out the sheer scale of the history we're covering. Notice how the narrative physically narrows down over time. It kicks off at the absolute origins of humanity, the primeval era. Then it focuses down on the patriarchs, roughly around 2000 to 1600 BC. From there, it transitions straight into the formation of Israel as a nation, and eventually the era of conquests and kingdoms. The source material acts like a massive funnel, drawing our attention from the entire universe down to one very specific, chosen lineage. Moving to Section 2, the primeval era. Now we're zooming in from the creation of the cosmos, and the narrative introduces us to the psychological and spiritual evolution of early humanity. Right at the dawn of human civilization, the source material sets up this absolutely fascinating juxtaposition. We literally see two distinct lineages emerge. On one side, you've got the lineage of Cain. Think of him as representing the natural man. This society is entirely worldly and incredibly self-reliant. I mean, they're the ones building cities, forging weapons of bronze and iron, and they're heavily driven by a culture of vengeance. But then, on the flip side, the text contrasts this with the lineage of Seth, the spiritual man. This lineage isn't defined by tech or achievements at all, but by its sheer reliance on the divine. We're talking about figures who, as the text says, walked with God, guys like Enoch and Noah. As humanity expands, the text lays out a really powerful cyclical narrative. It outlines a pretty clear progression. It starts with humanity's widespread corruption, which is then met with the severe divine judgment of the Great Flood. But here's the crucial part. That judgment is immediately followed by divine mercy. We get a brand new beginning and a covenant established with Noah, symbolized by a rainbow. But of course, human pride flares right back up, leading to the Tower of Babel, and that ultimately results in the dispersion of nations and languages all across the earth. Which brings us to Section 3, Abraham's journey. From that grand dispersion at Babel, we're going to zoom in much closer on one specific family living in Mesopotamia, right around 2000 BC. The historical narrative pivots in a huge way on this crucial covenant with a man named Abraham. The sources detail 6 very specific promises made to him: that he'd become a great nation, receive divine blessing, attain a great name, become a source of blessing to others, receive protection against his enemies, and finally, be a blessing to literally all the tribes on earth. This exact moment, right here, sets the foundational promise that ends up shaping the entire rest of the text. Now, what I think is really interesting here is that while Abraham is celebrated for this monumental faith, the text itself is shockingly impartial. It doesn't sugarcoat the patriarch's flaws at all. It shows us a guy who struggles deeply between his total faith in the divine and, well, his basic human instinct for self-preservation. Like when he goes down to Egypt and deceptively claims his wife is actually his sister just out of fear for his own life. It makes the character so much more grounded and deeply relatable. All right, Section 4, Jacob's trials. Zooming in even further from a growing, prosperous family, we step right into the gritty, totally relatable family drama of Abraham's grandson, Jacob. So Jacob is a guy known for his cunning, right? But he seriously meets his match in his uncle, Laban. He ends up enduring a brutal 20-year period of grueling labor in Mesopotamia. He works an astonishing 14 years just to secure marriages to the women he loves, Leah and Rachel, and that's after Laban pulls a fast one and tricks him on his first wedding night. After all that, he has to work another 6 long years just to build up his own independent wealth through flocks of sheep and goats. To put that into perspective for us today, think of this like a boss totally changing your key performance indicators right before bonus season. The sources highlight that Laban deceptively changed Jacob's agreed-upon wages 10 different times over those years. 10 times. It was an incredibly unfair and, honestly, hostile work environment. Let's look at how this intense pressure actually builds Jacob's character. Instead of retaliating with the exact same deception he was so well known for in his youth, Jacob actually evolves. He just endures the injustice, works faithfully, and trusts this divine strategy of reaping what you sow to fairly earn his wealth. Even when Laban tries to completely stack the deck, telling Jacob he can only keep the super rare speckled and spotted sheep, the divine steps in, and Jacob's flocks multiply massively anyway. So, this 20-year tension finally boils over into a dramatic, secret escape by Jacob and his family. Laban actually chases him down with an armed group, but the divine warns Laban in a dream to back off and not harm Jacob. It ultimately resolves in the Treaty of Gilead. They set up a physical boundary of stones, essentially forging a mutual pact of peace and non-aggression. Jacob's massive trial in Mesopotamia is officially over, and he finally heads back to his homeland of Canaan. And that brings us to our final section, Section 5, Birth of Israel. Here, we zoom in to the absolute tightest, most intimate shot of our entire explainer, a quiet, incredibly dark riverbed at night. Jacob is right on the brink of re-entering his homeland, but he gets some absolutely terrifying news. His brother Esau, the very same brother Jacob swindled out of a blessing 20 years prior, is marching straight toward him with an army of 400 men. Stripped of all reliance on his newfound wealth, and having sent his entire family ahead across the Jabbok River to keep them safe, Jacob is left utterly vulnerable. He is completely isolated in the dark. The source texts present this fascinating psychological profile of Jacob at this exact moment. See, even after 20 years of genuine growth and relying on God in Laban's house, Jacob still harbored a tiny, stubborn fraction, let's call it a 2% sliver, of his old, self-reliant, deceptive nature. That final, lingering piece of his ego absolutely needed to be broken before he could fulfill his destiny. And this sets the stage for one of the most enigmatic scenes in the entire text. In the dead of night, a mysterious figure attacks Jacob. They get into this brutal physical wrestling match that lasts all the way until the break of dawn. When the figure realizes Jacob just won't easily give up, he strikes Jacob's hip socket, instantly dislocating it. But Jacob, even in this blinding, crippling pain, clings to the figure, outright demanding a blessing. It's a brilliant illustration of the ultimate spiritual battle. Human willpower and self-reliance desperately clashing with divine authority, ending only in complete and total surrender. At the absolute climax of this struggle, the divine figure asks Jacob his name. Now, by answering Jacob, which historically meant deceiver or supplanter, he is finally truly confessing his flawed nature. And because of this total surrender and honest confession, he receives a profound transformation. He's given a brand new name, Israel. Israel meaning to wrestle or overcome, and El meaning God, the one who wrestles with God. This single, quiet moment of surrender actually defines the identity of an entire future nation. The imagery here is just beautifully poetic. The sun finally rises over the place Jacob calls Peniel, which means the face of God. He crosses the river to reunite with his family, forever changed. But he walks with a permanent limp. He leaves that river bearing a physical weakness that paradoxically signifies his ultimate spiritual strength. Because from this day forward, he can never again run away on his own strength. He has to rely entirely on the divine. As we wrap up this epic explainer, having traveled all the way from cosmic creation down to one man's struggle in the dirt, I want to leave you with a really provocative thought. Just like Jacob, we all have those areas of self-reliance or past flaws that we cling to. So what is the 2% in your own life that you're still wrestling with in the dark? What part of your ego needs to surrender before you can truly step into your next chapter? Think about that for a bit and keep exploring.